Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this week's episode of Fake Accents Unite. I am joined, as always, by a rather sick and poorly Britisher. Good evening, sir.
Hello there. Well, I'm sort of upright-ish, so you know. Oh, and as I speak, here arrives Rubber. What can I say? Over to you, Rubber.
Marvellous.
Okay, we're echoing. Let's kill that.
Yeah, it's you, mate. We're joined by the echoist Nicholas, Mr. Rubber himself.
That must be one of the greatest entries ever.
What?
She mate?
What?
Are we there? Marvellous. I'm also joined, as you may have been able to tell, by the ecstatic giggling by Daughter of Albion. Good evening.
Hello, good evening.
And by our American friend based Liz, who joins us from across the pond.
Hello.
Welcome.
Oh.
Now,
How is your sister Liz?
The baby has arrived. So yes, I'm going
Oh,
later.
congratulations, boy or girl?
Girl. Yeah, for anybody interested, my sister went into labor last night actually, and just delivered like half an hour ago. But they said that she's tired, so they've asked people to wait for a couple of hours and then come to visit. So yes, exciting. I have a new niece.
Oh, congratulations.
oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
I wonder what she'll call it.
So, obviously, as people may have noticed, this particular episode of Fake Accents Unite is called the T Redux edition. This being because a year ago today, or thereabouts, we had the first ever episode of Fake Accents Unite, I do believe, which was about talking all about tea and discussing things like biscuits and Bath Olivers. How back in those naive days when we didn't realise that the third biscuit would become a meme, when we were assigning different politicians the type of biscuit that they would prefer to binge on. Do you remember that?
For some reason, I seem to have wiped much of it from my memory.
It's such a shame. We'll have to revisit that.
I'm quite literally shocked at the idea that this was a year ago or something akin
Along
to
those
it ago.
lines. Yes, we have had a few pre-stream super chats that I am just going to go through, so don't forget them at the end. So Makuta Pterodax, formerly Lord Pterodax, says, "Lost a bet, thus I am now Makuta rather than Lord. Also, that California video is now on 303.7 thousand views."
Yikes.
Good grief. So there's that one. And the Harry channel has donated $5 and says, "Saying that something is weak tea is the cruelest of insults." I'd have a tendency to agree. Certainly sorry?
Yeah, but there's nothing worse than a weak tea.
Absolutely not. If you're a weak tea... Well, I
He's
mean,
called you that recently.
did someone call me weak tea recently?
I was just wondering if that's why you're a bit salty about it.
I'm not particularly salty. I've been called milk toast by AA. And
Okay.
that wasn't
Okay,
particularly
right.
pleasant.
Not weak tea.
But
at
is
least
anything worse than salty weak tea?
Oh.
Would anyone put salt in their tea?
I was going to say,
mean,
who's making your tea?
There's definitely, like, you know how you get these specialty brands of tea which come in some ridiculous flavors? There is almost certainly a salted caramel tea.
I had a friend who put salt in my tea once. He never takes sugar, and I take one. And so he didn't even know where the sugar was in his cupboard. So he just saw something ground and white, decided to put a spoonful in. It was salt. He never has salt in anything either.
The Staff Sergeant Sniper chiming in saying, "Oh, 8 people watched that first stream," which is probably accurate, to be honest. I mean, it worked.
12 at least.
It worked its way up to like 800 or so, but that's pretty good. The Harry channel for $2 says, "Rubber is the biscuiter." So there's that.
Yeah.
And
I'll take that.
And
Surely that'd be
Makuta,
the biscuiteer.
the biscuiteer.
That's even better.
And Makuta Pterodax saying, "If tailed feature is the Scottisher, is Sargon the Englisher, Sutskoen the Danisher, and AA the Persianer?"
No, Sargon's the boomer.
It's the boomener. That's what we do. Erathris says, "Somalis put salt in their coffee." I mean, I see it working slightly better, perhaps, in coffee because it's just more bitter. But
Yes, but if Somali society is the result of putting salt in your coffee, then perhaps it's not advisable.
oof. The Keen on Dean has said perfidious Albionac, whatever that means. I presume that's a reference to you, Sarah. Perhaps you will understand what that is.
Sounds like magic Harry Potter language to me.
Oh God! Speaking of which, well done for segueing us that way, Sarah. Going on to J.K.
Oh, it wasn't
Rowling.
intentional. But...
J.K. Rowling's comments this week about what was it? Dumbledore's like vibrant sexual relationship
It was intense.
with an intense sexual relationship
Violent. You didn't say violent.
with vibrant.
Oh,
I said
sorry.
vibrant.
You've added your own caveats to that, Mark.
No, you're just hearing what you want to hear. You've got like your Freudian ear, Sarah, going for the sexual violence there. People saying I only put salt in my tea on the 4th of July. It's like just as a slap in the face. Oh, perfidious Albion is a nickname the French give the British, apparently. So there is that.
The French can't meme.
No, the French can't meme. We do have, before we get on to the main tea-related topics of the evening, like a couple of bits of chat which have come to our attention and a few political bits and pieces, although trying to keep it fairly light-hearted here today, people. So we're not going to be talking about things like New Zealand anytime soon. But Object of Hate has said that he went to, or she went to, a British embassy presentation for Brits in Switzerland a month ago. And they've signed and are still signing stuff that so that no matter what happens on the 29th, we're all okay. And apparently they're doing the same for EU and EFTA countries too, to maintain the status quo for residents of both countries. The only people in trouble in case of a hard Brexit are Brits being sent to work in the EU or EU citizens being sent to the UK beyond March 30th. And whose right to work may be in limbo for a bit, but everyone before then is fine. Business meetings are fine, but not being sent as a consultant. So the Swiss have granted in total 3,500 work visas specifically for Brits outside of the total annual number of visas they grant to foreign workers who are non-EU. And so it looks like things are all relatively dandy in that regard. So yeah.
Well, you see, the Swiss. I mean, some time ago I read an article whereby the Swiss were effectively being told not to do any negotiations with the British by the EU, which led them all the more to do negotiations with the British. Because, how do we say, in Switzerland, apparently, one is a little bit heartily sick of the European Union.
Or
you
just
have to remember they are surrounded by them. So the European Union is kind of really playing hardball with them. And there's a massive project in Switzerland that is called the Base Tunnel. So you have to think of it that they have got a crossing across the Alps at the Gotthard Pass, where you go basically to the southern side of the Alps. Now, this thing was created, 100 years ago or something like that. So you can imagine you kind of have to wind your way up the mountain until the mountain is at least, how should we say, thin enough so that the tunnel could be dug, if you know what I mean, back in those days. And then you have to wind your way back down the mountain again on the other side. So it's quite an arduous journey.
Sounds like a sort of thing people would make pilgrimage up the mountain, yes.
So what they have then done now is dug a tunnel really through the very base of the Alps. That's why it's called the Base Tunnel.
There's a base tunnel.
So basically, it's enormously long. Now, you have to understand that, when we talk about, the Eurotunnel and things like that, well, it was dug through chalk. Well, the Alps are granite.
Wow.
So you can imagine what it entails to go through there. Now, you have to realize that the Swiss, obviously being surrounded by the European Union, they needed some kind of deal, some kind of understanding with the European Union in order to be able to trade with any of their neighbors, if you know what I mean. So the European Union made it a condition. So basically, at one moment, they had to accept freedom of movement. But aside from that, they had to agree the base tunnel. Prior to that, the base tunnel apparently was some sort of, pie in the sky potential one-day plan, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So the Europeans decided, you've got to do the base tunnel. Now, what you have to consider as far as the Swiss are concerned is most of Switzerland, the overwhelming majority of Switzerland, is north of the Alps. They have one canton south of the Alps. That's the one bit of sort of Italian-speaking part of their country. So the idea that they should launch one of the greatest construction projects ever seen on Earth, to dig one of the longest tunnels on Earth through solid granite,
Yikes.
in order to get to their one fairly sparsely populated canton on the south side of the Alps, is ridiculous. The only reason they did that was in order to placate the European Union. Because, of course, it makes for a very convenient connection with, the northern European countries with Italy. So that's why they wanted that. So as far as the Swiss are concerned, they were bringing this massive project after years and years of building finally to an end. And now what has happened? Now the European Union wants more negotiations with Switzerland in order to make it so that some of the regulations that are introduced by the European Union should automatically be introduced into Swiss law.
Oh, they're so sneaky.
And the Swiss are kind of looking at it going, hang on a moment, why did we just go through this gargantuan project? The only reason we did that was for you, that we saw that as the condition. We have fulfilled the condition. As far as we're concerned, we've paid the price. We should now be party of this trade zone.
So go do one, please.
By the way, we would now like you to change this.
They just they keep asking for more and more and more. But do you know what?
Can you see why the Swiss might be very keen to sign a contract with the British just to spite the European Union? So that there was a story behind the Swiss basically being the first country to basically say, fine, we'll do a deal with you.
I see. Very, very good. The people talking about the tunnel saying it took 4,000 Swiss Army knives to dig that tunnel.
Do you remember the opening ceremony? It was really strange, very pagan.
Oh right, this is the thing which people are calling it the demonic pagan tunnel.
Yeah, yeah, really strange.
What happened?
It was just they had this sort of big, big opening ceremony, sort of artsy musical type thing.
Yeah.
And it was very pagan, lots of kind of animal sacrifice symbology, and a giant worm eating into the side of the mountain. Alex Jones went nuts on it. It was very but not in the kind of cool Peterson way, in a kind of
just in a kind of weird,
kind of eyes wide shut type way.
More in the weird Red Dwarf way.
Did they actually kill animals, or was it just pictures?
I think
I'm not sure.
We missed.
I think we can say that more than likely the Swiss won't have been sacrificing real animals.
We missed the halal slaughter of 4,000 goats at the. Like, people saying the Swiss are based as fuck. They'll never fall for these trips. The Swiss have the high ground. The EU shouldn't overestimate their power. Are we saying that the European Union took the tunnel for granite?
I like that one.
I like the one with the high ground.
Yes,
I thought you did.
Dare I mention the Romans?
Please,
the Romans never conquered that part of the world.
I see.
They simply waited until their ruling lineages had died out, and basically sort of then kind of agreed to take over the administration of the place. Because even the Romans weren't daft enough, looking at the Alps to go, okay, we'll just march 14 legions into that and try and conquer something. Because,
it hasn't had an invasion since the 14th century, I believe. I think the Burgundians were the last to try.
It's about time. They're overdue.
Oh, that was the Battle of Murat, wasn't it? But no, I think they've had, they've had sort of the odd time Napoleon just marched through and Russian armies came marching through. But obviously they would have, they would have sufficient power not to have to ask.
Dominic says, so it's easier to dig a tunnel through the Alps than negotiate with the EU.
Yes, precisely.
It is.
Did anybody see the tweet from Jeremy Vine? I think today it was. He found a clip of Guy Verhofstadt sort of outlining the federalist vision, and even Jeremy Vine, who for American viewers is a fairly kind of milquetoast BBC radio journalist, isn't he? He's kind of slightly left leaning, but even he was saying this has got to be a spoof.
Bloody hell, really?
But even he is becoming red pill. Jeremy Vines.
Was that on Twitter? Was it?
Every time Verhofstadt opens his mouth, 100,000 people switch to leave.
Yeah, that's true.
Wow,
He's a very unpleasant man, isn't he? Oh, I'll have to look that up.
He shouts like exactly how I would imagine one of Hitler's generals would shout.
Yeah, someone did do a mashup of that, I'm sure.
We need to. The reason this is failing is we have not devolved more powers to the European Union. It's just like, oh my goodness. Ladin says we have altered the deal. Pray we do not alter it any further.
What is so remarkable about Guy Verhofstadt is that he is Belgian. So he is, he's at home in Brussels.
Mm.
And, the British are leaving. And yet he holds his speeches in English. It's almost as if he's trolling us. He wants us to hear. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
If he were holding all his speeches in, French, I mean, it wouldn't quite fare as well on social media, would it?
No, I don't think so. Although not that anyone can really speak French at the moment because they're all too busy fighting in the streets. I saw this thing the other day about how the Gilets Jaunes protests are still ongoing on like the 18th week now or something. And I haven't seen any media coverage in absolutely ages. And I was just like, I wonder if they've calmed down. But a friend of mine was like, oh, shall we go to do you want to go to Paris at some point in the, I've never been and we should plan a trip for later in the year. And I was just like, you do know what's going on in Paris right now, do you? It's just like everyone seems to be none the wiser.
Well, in all fairness, for a while, I think they did calm down. The demonstrations were still happening, but they did calm down. Now they seem to have livened up again.
Well, the last thing,
Six Nations are over.
I saw more. That's fantastic.
But
this.
There is also the issue that I really wouldn't want to be in Macron's shoes come the warmer months.
Is that because his shoes are too small for you, or
no? I mean, you just have to imagine that this Gilets Jaunes protest has been going on at the unlikeliest time for any kind of trouble to be in the streets. They've gone through the winter months.
Yeah.
Normally, when it's time for revolutions and whatever, it always really tends to happen in the summer, because that's when you can go out and 7 o'clock in the evening.
It's not so difficult then, is it? Yeah.
Throw Molotov cocktails.
This is a bad point.
This has been going through absolutely freezing times. So as the weather warms up, so too will the temperature on the street, so to speak, if you know what I mean.
The trouble is what's going to happen is they're going to run out of cars to burn, and there will be no barbecues in the summer. That's what's going to happen. That's how they've been staying warm. That's it. You think that they're burning cars in protest, but really it's just to keep themselves going. Object of Hate saying the anti-capitalists masquerading as Gilets Jaunes ransacked and set fire to the restaurant Sarkozy celebrated his 2007 election in. It's called the Fouquet, and it's quite the symbol. I didn't know that, so thank you very much for that.
Is it actually run by someone called Mrs. Fuckett?
I really hope so. It's this thing saying protests in winter, it's a sure sign of climate change.
There must be lots of people saying, oh my God, the tone of the British has really dropped today. But then they may not necessarily know keeping up appearances. But there you go.
No, of course not.
Yes.
Okay.
So speaking of I've just searched up that J.K. Rowling reference where it's like their relationship was incredibly intense. It was passionate and it was a love relationship. I'm less interested in the sexual side, although I believe there is a sexual dimension to this relationship.
Gross! I didn't care about that.
No,
It's just like, oh my
I care about what Dumbledore's getting up to
Is
between
this the moment to debate the new spell, homosexualiamus?
It's actually Amaronius homosexualis. I know because I used it on AA the other week, and look at him now. But the
Ooh.
so there's I have a couple of like just the last things which are going to be vaguely political for the evening. So Brexit, which Magoot has been nagging me about in the chat, and saying, you know, what's going to happen, because there's an article here by the British by BBC, sorry. And if I share my screen for just a second, Britisher, if you'd be so kind as to read in a very sardonic way the title.
Third Brexit vote must be different. Speaker.
It's just like, so we've had 2 of these, right? And they haven't gone particularly the way we wanted. The third one must be different, or else.
You know, I can actually proudly proclaim that I reported this on Twitter before the BBC reported it.
Yes, this is only 40 minutes ago. Congratulations, Britisher, ahead of the curve as always.
Yep. I had it live on television at the time, so yeah.
So I
did enjoy it. Yes.
So basically, John Bercow has said that he will not allow a third Brexit vote in the coming days on substantially the same motion as MPs rejected last week. And so this is where Theresa May is floundering as well and going, oh, you know, I'm not going to put the deal to another vote unless I'm sure I'm going to win again. So it's, you know, kind of a bit more...
But meanwhile, she's had various ministers out telling everybody how lots and lots of Tory backbenchers are now coming round to her view.
Oh, of course they are. Like, as in, I don't believe that they are, but of course they are. And of course she's saying that. I just love the fact that they call it, every single time they have this, they call it a meaningful vote. And then as soon as they failed,
the rest of the time.
So this is called meaningful vote 3, supposedly, right? So that's the theory.
From a non-English person, did she change her deal before she submitted it for the second vote?
Yes. I think yes.
Okay.
So there were a couple of
as we say, what she had was she had a piece of paper by the European Union saying, which supposedly was legally binding, she assured us, that the European Union couldn't keep us trapped in this agreement forever without letting us out of it.
And there would be peace in our time as well?
Precisely, yes. Yes. And then, of course, in the run-up to that, Geoffrey Cox, who is the Attorney General, he was effectively asked to speak in the House of Parliament. And he is someone who definitely loves the sound of his own voice. But even he, after a lengthy speech, eventually had to basically conclude that the risk really was still the same as it was before she left. So she had an additional piece of paper that she could add to the agreement. So one could, at a stretch, say that it was now something different because there was now some new data, so to speak, if you know what I mean. And that's why Bercow effectively allowed it. Whereas this time round, he's saying, well, look, you obviously can't renegotiate anything now with the European Union. So what you're going to do is you're going to present to the letter exactly the same thing that you've just presented last week. And that won't really work. You know, there must be a substantive difference. Otherwise, I can't really allow it. What is worrying then is that Mr. Jacob Rees-Mogg stood up. And he said, well, when basically Parliament closes and then reconvenes for another session, the rule wouldn't really apply then, would it? So you know how they have parliamentary recesses, and apparently this idea that you can't bring the same thing back to Parliament only counts for the same session.
Interesting.
So technically, in the future, so even if she might be prevented from doing it now, she might be able to present it to Parliament after the next parliamentary recess.
But he may not have been saying that as a suggestion as much as a warning.
that may well be, make of it what you will. But it's sort of an interesting sort of little bit of information, which, funnily enough, the mainstream media in its reporting of it hasn't really picked up. Everybody has just reported on what Burko has been saying.
Well, and with that, I think it's time to leave Brexit behind for calmer waters. The basically people saying meaningful vote 3, drink your bloody tea. And Dr. Martin Luther Pepe has donated.
He has a meme.
He says Britisher. Roman top trumps when? Also, hi Sarah. Because he knows that you're his favourite, Sarah.
Well, yeah. Then again, who would be the top trump in who would be the top trump in Roman top trumps? I think Rubber knows.
Because are we talking early Republic, late Republic, early Empire, late Empire?
I knew having the two of you on at the same time was a mistake.
No.
Gaius Marius.
I was more referring to your showing off how you had learned how to pronounce a certain emperor's name correctly.
Trajan.
Yes, precisely.
Would he be Gaius Marius?
Gaius Marius?
So someone, and I won't mention who, has just shared a tweet with me, right? Which obviously I said we wouldn't go back to politics, and it's not technically politics, but it says no one, silence. J.K. Rowling, Dumbledore shat on Snape's chest. just because. Why not? Why not? She's going to stay relevant somehow. Anyway. Moving swiftly on.
Procophilius expecto.
So, just to go through, our panel, do we have any particular favourite teas on the panel side?
Yorkshire.
I'll start with Sarah chiming in with a Yorkshire. I'll go across the pond, see whether or not tea or coffee is your preferred poison, Liz.
Definitely tea. Coffee does bad things to me. Too much caffeine. And I actually have a new favorite now. It's a vanilla chai tea that I went to a tea party at a friend's house and she was serving this and it was so good. So that is my new favorite now.
We have vanilla chai, Liz. Rubber, what's your favorite?
My favorite is actually stuff you can get in Cornwall called Cornish tea. I had it on holiday. It was really nice. But today I bought a box of Clipper. Just everyday tea. It was very nice.
So Cornish tea is that sort of a secessionist tea that once in a while votes for a Conservative MP that then demands GPS trackers in knives.
Well,
it's also got a little bit of sand in it.
Is a little chip, and of course you can't use a knife to open the foil lining on the inside of the box.
No.
For if you do so anywhere in the UK, a siren sounds somewhere in Cornwall.
The air raid siren.
The old air raid shelter, yeah.
Just to alert everyone in Cornwall at the same time.
I was going to say that what the Conservative Party needs is a night of the long knives, but I don't think they will be able to get a knife.
Oh my goodness. And Britisher, are you still drinking your Trigothnan?
I've still got some Trigothnan lying around, actually, but yeah, no, I am drinking, as we speak, I am drinking Yorkshire tea.
Yorkshire, so double Yorkshire. I've got my Earl Grey on the side at the moment. That's my particular poison for the time being. The Night of the Butter Knives. Just imagine.
It's too butter.
It's too butter. Or if we're going off last week, it'd be Night of the Sporks. It was just,
oh Lord!
If you remember that.
I am
spoken about tea. Or more about making tea. It's because I know that the Britisher and I assume most British people would say it is you cannot make tea if you use a microwave. You can't microwave the water first. And I don't microwave it. I use the kettle on the stove.
Good. I'm glad I don't have to eject you from this call, Liz.
Well, we don't have
your finger was hovering on
there.
Oh, always.
We have kettles.
Whenever she speaks.
We don't have electric kettles. We've got just the ones that you put on the stove top, but it's real.
That's so strange.
The ones that whistle.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes,
there's a market there.
So
Wait a minute,
well,
you guys can get to the moon, yet you haven't got electric
Yeah, but
kettles.
did they? Did they though?
Of course they did.
They got to the moon with an electric kettle.
I didn't realise we were talking to daughter of Jones here. Like,
Jones believes in the moon landing, which means I know it happened.
conspiracy
If
conspiracy
he believes
Albion.
it, then it definitely did.
Okay, but here's my question: if you were in a place where you had the only electricity, the only or electrical appliance you had was a microwave, and that is the only way you could heat water, would you make tea using microwaved water, or would you just go without tea?
Microwaving tea is literally a sin. That's
No,
all.
not microwaving.
I couldn't do without
Nobody
it.
microwaves their tea. I'm saying microwave the water to boil it, and then put the tea bag in
Yeah.
microwave water.
The American houses
I
only have one power socket.
I think
No, it's Americans don't have electric kettles, so
I
most
think-
Americans will microwave their
No,
their
what
water.
you're
just
what
because
you're
they have
trying
no
to
other
say is
option.
Americans are wrong.
it's
Yes,
as simple as
But
that.
my question is, how bad is it?
Look,
Would you microwave? Would you make it with
you-
microwave water, or would you not make any tea at all?
Listen, Liz, I'm gonna put it very simply. The force of the rage contained within a British person, offered only a microwave to heat water, would be such that the thermal energy in their hands at that time would heat 1 million cups of tea. So
The nation would immediately take to its sheds
yes,
to construct their own custom-made, homemade kettles.
out of
You
parts.
go out
It's
and build a
amazing what you
fire in
could.
the backyard. Heat it over the
British
fire.
kitchens come with between 6 and 8 power sockets. You could have a microwave and an electric kettle and a toaster.
I'm saying you can't
They
get
just-
electric kettles over here. Not very easy. They're
It's
not
just
very
saying they
common. I've
don't
never seen
really
one.
sell. I think if
Liz,
anyone
not
Grandma's
available,
new one.
you'd have
if
to
any-
go to
one.
one.
if anyone's got any investment capital,
What is
in the
wrong
US,
with a
it's-
nation that doesn't need boiled water?
We have boiled water, but we use it for soup.
I like the I like how quaint the idea of having a kettle on the stove is though.
I know
Yes,
it does. It does remind you very much of like having to sit by it
Railway
perhaps
children-esque.
in very like a rustic style kitchen.
Mm.
Wonder-
You
I wonder
can't.
if they haven't got a way of just easily heating water. How do they deal with sort of instant soups, cuppa soups and things like that?
Oh, don't tell
They
me.
always have a big batch on the
microwave
Builders throughout the nation here basically live off the stuff, don't they?
A mixture
And they
of
will
that
basically
and
always have an electric kettle with them,
a
usually
mixture
covered
of
in
that
paint.
and pot noodle.
Yes.
Oh, okay. The chat is correcting me. Apparently, the higher end stores do have electric kettles. I'm sorry. I
You're
grew up
just
poor.
you're just too
In the
poor.
stores- yeah, the stores I shop at do not have electric kettles. I've never
Can we
Liz-
have a GoFundMe for Liz for send
For
Liz a
Liz to
kettle?
Send Liz a kettle.
Send her
I
a
know.
union
You
I've
know,
looked into them on
People,
Amazon.
people are being. Hang on, I've got the solution. People are being put off with raising money for Africa. We could now raise money to buy American
Liz.
electric kettles.
Redirect to
it could
Liz.
And I dare David Lammy to criticise that.
Lammy for Liz. Oi.
Lammy for Liz. Oh my god. We need like the Make a Wish Foundation for Liz to get in touch immediately.
You can just
I
see
have it.
the live. You
I
can
don't
just
have it
see
all.
the live footage, can't you, of a sort of a Cherokee helicopter airlifting in a massive net. 3.5 tons of Jaffa cakes.
And a single kettle on top perched.
And you could have Stacey Dooley cradling a little American child whilst doing a little tea party for them.
Yeah.
Every year, 120 million Americans go without an electric
Without
kettle.
tea.
Somebody
Solid,
microwaving their water and explaining that that's their only option, and then yes.
yes, and how much it makes them sad.
It's
Sol
got to be done then.
Sol Invictus chiming in with $2 saying, tea is a trend in the US. No need for electric ket. I'm just like, oh, no, you just don't know what you're missing.
Who even are
And-
you?
If
And-
tea is a trend, then truly civilization has not yet quite arrived.
Oh, so, good call, Brisha. Tim Cornish with $10. Thank you very much. Saying civilized colonials have electric kettles. Microwaved hot water for tea is a crime. Not available in Ancapistan, Florida.
It could also be a southern thing. It could be that the northern states have them in their stores or whatever. I'm just saying I'd never even heard of one until I started streaming with you guys.
Really?
And I actually looked them up on Amazon because I was just I'd never heard of an electric kettle.
People
That's
are
so
telling
interesting.
people in chat are telling me that, from what I understand, that their electric kettles don't work properly in America because it's only 220 volts from the plug. So I do not know about the relevant.
Does anyone remember in America? I'm sure they did at one point. There was a company that brought a kettle onto the market, but it was withdrawn because it looked like Hitler.
Yeah.
Hang on, let me show you, Mark. I'll send it to you.
Yeah. Send the link.
It's a teapot, though, not a kettle.
Oh, okay. Okay.
That's
I'm
one
not
thing I
sure.
don't have. I need to get a teapot. I guess I usually just I brew it just directly in my mug, but it'd be nice to have
Yes. There you go.
It's in the
Yeah.
site. Oh, let me pop this up. I'm going to screen share this to get instantly demonetized.
I can't believe it really happened.
A kettle that looks like Hitler brews trouble for J.C. Penney. It's just like, what the?
It looks nothing like it.
It's just, I love that it's got hair. I love that the image has hair. But who did this? As in who looked at this and was like, do you know what? That looks awfully familiar to someone I know.
And then demand that they pull it. Well, I assume they did.
It was on an interstate
realm.
It was. You could tell it was in California. You can tell it was in California, can't you? I mean, really, this Hitler looks like a kettle.
Funny,
He even has his right arm extended. I'm a little Nazi, short and stout. It's expensive as well. It's £35 kettle. So there's that. This stainless steel kettle has all the bells and whistles you'll need. A cool touch handle, space-saving design, and a delightful dog whistle to let you know when it's ready to pour. My kids love when it boils and starts to whistle. This is the Nuremberg speech starts coming out, and that's the whistle.
Oh, that's so bizarre.
Oh my goodness. And the same user notes the appliance looks beautiful. Well, we know where the Nazis are in California, don't we?
Well, no, it's made of nicely polished steel, so the light of the tiki torches reflects properly.
German steel. That's
yeah, absolutely. Iron Cross.
The Iron Cross.
I don't know what that means. Iron Brew.
Oh my goodness! Oh dear.
I'm glad I remembered that.
But yes, as long as you never get a plastic kettle, because it makes the water taste like shit, no matter how much.
It has plastic in it, doesn't it?
People, yes, of course.
Use a plastic kettle. It doesn't. Seems like
it's because the heating element is the heating element is raised, so it's technically only the water gets hot, but it's not good for the water. I'm off to make a Jew. I mean a brew. People saying I have a Chairman Mao microwave. Apparently, that's quite impressive. JS, Dr. Martin Luther Pepe saying Hitler kettle for use on gas stoves only.
Oh jeez.
Oh my goodness. Apparently there's a house that looks like Hitler in Wales as well.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes, I've heard of that one. Yeah.
Oh dear. So I'm
it does as well.
So I'm gonna go on. Let me see here. Oh, the first tea-related article that I had planned. So we have 10 little known facts about tea here. So apparently it's only been around for 5,000 years. And second only to, apparently coffee's overtaken it as the most popular beverage worldwide. Although, as I understand it, American coffee, and correct me if I'm wrong, Liz, for the majority of coffee retailers in America is more like hot milk with a bit of coffee in it.
It depends on where you are. No, a lot of people drink their coffee black, and they say if it's not black, it's not real. If I have coffee, it has a lot of milk and a lot of sugar, but most people... Actually, I think my grandmother and myself are the only ones I know who drink it like that.
But the apparently the tea was originally used for medicinal purposes and was chewed. You chew the leaves. Can you imagine doing that? Going in, I'd love a cuppa. Starts chewing the tea leaves that come in there. But it was only it was used because of its medicinal properties to purify the water for the emperor of China, who, upon drinking it by accident, because it was supposed to be, he used it to wash his skin or something, and he accidentally drank it, and then enjoyed the tea, and therefore the concept of drinking tea was born. But I didn't know this next one, which is that all tea comes from the same plant. So oolong green, white teas are all the same. It's the same plant. It's just treated differently after it's been harvested. Is this news to anyone?
I read a fascinating book a couple of years ago called All the Tea in China, which is the story of how Britain sent a spy into China in the 1850s to steal tea plants bring them over to India.
Spy, that's great.
And they were saying that I think there was a mountain and mountain ranges where tea originates from, and supposedly the original tea bush is still on that mountain. And you're not allowed to harvest from it.
Yeah, but when I'm sort of hearing this, I can't imagine that all the tea plants are the same. I could only imagine that they're kind of derived, they're kind of bred from a single type of plant.
Yes, the soil conditions make a big difference.
Just in the same way as we have, taken cabbage and bred it into, an enormous amount of different vegetables.
Yes, we forced it. We forced it to.
So I could well imagine that, tea may well be, sort of, given that we've had 5,000 years, according to what you just told us, one would assume that like that you get different varieties of tea, if you know what I mean. So you would more than likely have different varieties of tea plant, I would assume.
Damn colonial producers changing the chemical structure of tea and cabbage. The apparently go on.
When I was young, we used to pick mint leaves from my mom's garden and just put them in a mason jar full of water and set it out in the sun and just leave it there all day. Because in Florida, it gets very hot outside. And at the end of the day, it would be. We would call it tea. We were kids, just add sugar and drink it. So it wasn't actually tea leaves; it was just mint leaves. I don't know if that
sounds yummy.
Counts or not.
I have missed a super chat from Staff Sergeant Sniper who says, "How hard is it to use a regular kettle, people? Jeez." I was just like, fair enough. Apparently, herbal teas which don't use the typical tea leaf are called tisanes, or tisanes. Tisane. Instead of so peppermint tea is not actually a peppermint tea; it's a peppermint tisane.
Ooh, la-di-da.
Because it is originally used to describe a drink made from pearl barley, and now it's any kind of herbal infusion. So there you go. Now this is something that most people are familiar that Darjeeling tea is considered to be the champagne of tea, right? So this is obviously very rare, but many products packaged under Darjeeling are actually blends, so that it's like cheating. It's like they water it down with other tea blends in order to make it cheaper. But the most expensive cup of tea is a rare Chinese variety called something I can't pronounce, Tea Guanyin. And it's basically named after the Buddhist iron goddess of mercy. This oolong tea costs you $1,500 per pound. So that's quite impressive, do you think, for effectively a set of cups of tea? But apparently you can brew the tea leaves 7 times before they use their flavour. So you're going to get your money's worth. That's the general idea. But and also the idea that a tea bag is something which was very rare until relatively recently as well.
Well, I actually recall there was some play I heard of once in which the British relatives kill off their rich American relative, obviously for the inheritance money, but also due to to his annoying habit of using tea bags.
Reasonable.
I do have I'm going to jump from this one because that was a little dull. But you remember last time we talked about tea, Britisher, we talked about how this person who said tea is shit and here's why. And it was basically this big long Guardian article.
Oh, is that the tea is a national disgrace?
Yeah, that's the one where it's talking about how they were projecting their fears about their nana and stuff like that, and how it's brown slop. Well, I have an article here which is going, what? It's just brown slop. I'm not talking about people, Sarah.
I was referring to the
Guardian. Get your head out the gutter. I mean, but I do have an article here again from the Graniad, which says, "Women, beware teas with a gender agenda."
What?
Herbal drinks that claim.
Gender.
Sorry, go on.
Some plants do have a sort of gender. You have to get a male and female plant.
Oh, they're not talking about the male and female plants.
Not science, Liz.
They're talking about how herbal drinks that claim to be specially blended for women should be treated with skepticism.
You see, I treat it with skepticism, but not for the reason the Guardian cites.
I feel like the Guardian has a bit of an identity crisis because I agree. The first line of this particular opinion article says tea is a fabulous drink, which is somewhat at odds with the national disgrace element in the rest of it.
Oh, that must make for a tense office environment. With the tea drinkers and the non-tea drinkers.
I think in the tea is a national disgrace article, they said something along the lines of, it must be no more arduous task on this earth than to be the person who does the tea run at the office. And it was just such a privileged thing to say.
First world problems.
Like just saying there's nothing worse than to have
I like the way they subtly indicate that that's never been them, because the person that must have to do that. Not you then, not something you've experienced.
Of course not. That was a big sigh, Britisher. Do you have something to say?
You know, it just came to me. You know, get up, get on up, get a cup of tea like a tea lady.
What?
Because would you do me the favor of actually checking the name of the person who who's responsible for this?
James Brown.
James Brown. Dr. James Brown.
James Brown.
Oh my God.
Is it Dr.
Brown?
Okay. That makes a little more sense because you haven't gone insane.
I'm so confused.
Thank you for this. This is actually.
I quite enjoyed the kind of panicked silence that I was spreading here.
It's like as British.
As the British, you're about to sneeze, and we're just sort of.
Are you ready for AA's next rap battle?
I can't deal with the idea of the British having. I can't deal with the idea.
Actually, I'll leave it to Teabag.
Oh, very good.
Yes,
very
good. Very good. Someone clip that British rap. He says, "Well, you should do that, Teabag, and then implement it in your next great masterpiece." But people say Britisher appears to have dropped an acid tab. It's just an itty bitty waste and a cup of tea in your face.
No, I'm afraid I was just way ahead of you all.
I was like, please tell me that on the anniversary of the first Fake Accents, Britisher hasn't had a stroke on my stream.
I can't believe that's a whole year.
I know.
Wowza.
That's great.
What have I done this year?
And 6,000 subscribers later. Thank you. So apparently, this is that recently tea has been seen as a product revitalization. Flavored teas and herbal teas now sitting next to the traditional red label on the supermarket shelves. But alongside this, a more insidious change has occurred. The emergence of teas targeting women for specific health benefits. Targeting women. Right, this is bad for women.
These predators targeting women.
Bands of roaming tea tasters storming the country, forcing women to drink specialty teas.
Forcing women.
Forcing women, yes. Were you held down last weekend? Do you remember when you went out around the town, Sarah? And you were held at gunpoint until you tried this new particular vanilla chai latte frappuccino.
I'll do it willingly.
Exactly. So these products are claimed to be specially blended for women with cranberry rose, shatavari. What on earth is shatavari?
Chakravari, like Baroness.
Of course, I think you're the only person who would make that particular reference, Sarah. Thank you for that.
I'm glad you got it.
Oh dear, but apparently, believe it or not, it's impossible to make robust claims for beneficial effects for womankind, as these ingredients make their perilous journey through the stomach and into your bloodstream. So there we go. It's like the idea of herbalists. But they were linked to this. Something's brewing behind the rise of women's teas. From cuppers for period pain to a breastfeeding blend. Now, I really hope that that's not what I think it is. Right? Teas for women are everywhere, and should we believe the flowery hype? So tea has become a gendered issue. That's what I'm hearing for this.
Issue?
Issue. Have a look at the box on the left. The picture. This.
Are you buying tea pads or sanitary pads?
I like particularly that the tea company that is called Pucker.
Yes.
Because previously you told us how tea was originally chewed, which would make this chew pucker.
Chew pucker.
That was
cute.
Tell me, Britisher, did you actually get the reference earlier about the high ground being actually a Star Wars reference? That's a no, ladies and gentlemen. That's a no.
I believe there is even I have seen tiny little clips of, I hold the high ground. And you look at it and just go, oh dear. It's a stupid thing to say in a sword fight where you're standing 2 steps apart and one of them is basically a foot higher than the other.
Can't he just like jump a bit higher? Can't be that hard, can it?
Britisher is a meme addict, confirmed. Definitely for prequels memes. Are you going to say hello there later on in the stream, Britisher?
Hello there.
That was a bit more sexually charged than I was expecting.
Me too.
Perhaps keep that one to yourself in future.
Well, you see, I've seen Leslie Phillips and Terry Thomas just once too often.
Indeed.
Rubber will know what I mean. These fantastic lines. Ding dong, I say.
Rather.
So this article, right? Most of it's relatively banal, right? It's talking about how there are yogis' balanced teas in tribute to the wonderful women of the world. Women's energy tea containing hibiscus leaves and angelica root, blended with the subtle power of the women in mind.
Is that the female equivalent of super male vitality?
Yes.
Women's energy tea.
Super male. I don't even know. Right. So
they do have a love tea, which I bought over Valentine's Day just because the packaging was so cute. It looked nice in my kitchen. You can tell me anything.
Did it cure the crippling issue of you not having anyone for Valentine's Day, Sarah?
I didn't know that was a fact I'd confirmed or denied thus far. I like you assumed though.
Obviously.
Consolatory tea. No,
apparently. I'm just being a dick. Anyway, then there are teas for specific life or cycle stages, such as Pucker's breastfeeding brews or the yogi's moon cycle teas for women specifically on their periods. The rise in teas for women has been in sync with the well-being economy, according to Lucy Green, who can't spell either Lucy or Green in her name. Who says to trend blah blah blah. Anyway, they can be consumed as a complement to yoga and Pilates.
The same shops that sell those teas also sell lots of scented candles.
I presume so, yes. Although it's likely to be like you can just see it in Holland and Barrett, can't you?
I don't think I've ever seen a more North London middle class news article in my life than this. This just reeks of Hampstead.
So here we start getting into the slightly nuts bit, right? So Pole, I presume that Sebastian Pole, the master herbsmith who came up with many blends, claims that the rise in women's teas is a reaction to the disempowerment of women's health. There has been a cry from young women especially to take a bit more charge of their own health. They don't just want to be put on the pill because of period pain. So that's disempowerment, apparently. Biology is disempowerment. So people are saying, should women be drinking all of these teas? Because as much... Sorry, go on.
Sorry, if I could react to that prior paragraph there. Disempowerment of women's health. Is Paul a man or a woman? Just
A
need to ask
man.
that. He is basically saying, so women who don't want to do what we tell them to do, i.e., take the pill if you're in pain, you're trying to disempower women. Like that is, you are taking away women's choice, and you are saying that you are supporting women.
I mean,
I have a problem with this.
He is a master herbsmith trying to shill his tea. So I mean, I would. So
maybe
my
I'm
cuppa, my choice.
What he's saying in that paragraph.
Is this,
I just had a wonderful memory revived from Rubber's mention of Hampstead just earlier, because I remember a sort of a little anecdote whereby Winston Churchill, when he sort of was in government, this is after the war, I think it was a cabinet secretary or whatever came to him and said, "Oh, I'm afraid you've just lost one of your ministers, Prime Minister." I'm afraid he was found in the company of a young gentleman on Hampstead Heath last night in a state of undress.
Oh,
yikes!
To which Churchill kind of responded, saying, was the coldest night of the year last night, wasn't it? Makes you proud to be British.
I love that.
I like
That's wonderful.
my body, my choice. It's like my kettle, my choice. The stuff like that. So this thing continues talking about how tea has, and the packaging for the tea, it has to be a no nonsense brown so that it doesn't reinforce gender stereotypes.
Colorism.
And can men drink women's teas? And Sebastian Pole says, I make them and I drink them. The herbal mix of womankind will be just calming and soothing as much for a man. And the big question for The Guardian, do teas for women single us out as the weaker sex? In need of our women-only brews, as well as women-only train carriages and workspaces, too weak to cope with the company of men or the musky notes of builder's tea? I'll get back to you after this cuppa.
Well, I'm just waiting for the advert to appear on television in which they tell us that tea for men.
I mean,
then we'll kind of sit back and we'll wait for the feminist reaction to it.
We've got enough trouble right now, basically defending man-sized tissues to bother with.
Wasn't there also some kind of chunky
bars?
Sorry.
Yorkie,
that's the one. Yes, where they were basically telling, they're not for women, they're for men.
Oh, the whole thing. The funny thing is, the demographic that they chose to appeal to was women. The whole "it's not for girls" thing was, and the whole advertising campaign of women dressing up as men, particularly like young women, like I don't know, standing on each other's shoulders and then putting a trench coat on and a fake mustache and trying to buy a Yorkie and getting caught or whatever, was deliberately to advertise to women, just to be like, to try and get that kind of gut reaction of, they can't tell me what to do, I'm going to eat that.
They were trying to market a chocolate bar as being Chad, and everybody likes a bit of a bad boy chocolate bar.
Chad! I love that.
The chocolate Chad, yes.
Chad bar.
Chad bar.
Chocolate
Chad? I don't know.
I can't imagine either a candy commercial or a tea commercial here in the US marketed toward men. It would just be dismissed as very, very gay.
Chocolate.
Chocolate. There's an Australian sketch apparently about toilet paper for men, but they use real sandpaper.
Lord.
Is there a tea which helps?
That's what the cricketers had. It was just toilet paper that had on them.
Yes. Is there a tea which helps women cope with air conditioning in the workplace? Builders clearly have internalized misogyny, and they're always drinking tea. Coincidence? I think not.
Externalized as well, I would say.
Externalized misogyny, yeah.
I'm all for it, to be fair.
Yankee Candle did a series of mandals at some point. I own
Mandals.
I'm just going down the shop to collect my mandals.
4 mandals? Or?
Tea. I don't know. Tea for men, because Britain wasn't built on chamomile, and that sort of thing. Even the name is propaganda. Guardian. I mean, I think Too political. Too political.
Guardian is so chamomile.
Actually, that would make a sort of a good name for a brand of tea for men, wouldn't it? Guardian tea.
Guardian
No.
Easter.
Made with soy milk.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about the Mandel thing.
Only prepare in a microwave.
The Mandel thing, could it be a way of getting around the EU regulation on candle wicks? So they're candle wicks.
They're not actually candles, they're mandals now. Ah, dear.
Peter Mandelson.
So I have just getting Mandelson in your head.
Sorry, I didn't mean to say that out loud.
This entire stream is the shill for Peter Mandelson. I don't know.
I read his name earlier and it just clicked.
So I have my final tea-related article of the evening. Unless we want to go through the history of who is it? Lipton, which is quite interesting actually. But I don't think it's streamable material. It's just me reading an article. And on that note, let me read an article to you. Coffee or tea? The answer apparently is in your genes.
So what you're saying is that the coffee drinkers have faulty genes. That's rather right.
Yes, it's like an extra chromosome, or a coffeesome that's there. But apparently it's this is boring. Why am I reading this? This is just the most pointless thing I've found so far.
I like it. It's good.
Our taste genes partially play a role in how much coffee, tea, or alcohol we drink.
Yeah.
Of course, you would know that with your faulty genes for alcohol, wouldn't you, Britisher? You're teetotal, aren't you?
I am indeed, yes.
Is that where the word came from?
The
teetotal.
Yes, that is where it came from. Yes. No, with me, what it is I can taste alcohol, whereas people sort of, people tell me they can't taste alcohol, but apparently there are some people who can taste it, and it's not pleasant. It's as if you're drinking something with vinegar in it.
I mean, it does taste.
Girly gin, Britisher. So you put lots of like strawberry stuff in, and raspberry flavored fizz and sprinkles.
I want a stream where it's the Britisher doing his face reveal at 100k subs, and right, and it's just him drinking a Long Island iced tea for the first time.
Oh,
like Sheldon Cooper, yes.
We do not.
That would go down a storm. That would.
Yes, but I believe, at the present rate, it would take me some time, possibly a few decades, to get to 100,000.
Oh, Britisher, just be a bit more optimistic for today.
Not if they know there's a cheeky face reveal.
You see, the thing is that when they delete PewDiePie's account, they've got to go somewhere, all those fans.
Suddenly, there's an episode of South Park where I think someone.
So the Wall Street Journal can turn on me then, can they?
You'd revel in it, wouldn't you, Britisher? You and your 80 million, 90 million fans. I think there's an episode of South Park where there's this one guy who, whenever you moan about the fact that you can't get any more subscribers, reminds me of is this guy who can't get any Facebook friends whatsoever. He has one friend, I think, for the entire episode, and then someone quits, gets sucked into Facebook, and he has to fight the account to get out of Facebook, to get off social media. And he ends up sending all of his friends to this one kid who's got no friends whatsoever. And the look on his face when he looks and he's suddenly got 100 billion friends or something ridiculous like that, it's just priceless. But I imagine that's what the Britisher will look like when one of his videos goes viral these days. Oh dear. How is the week that was doing so far anyway, Britisher?
Oh, the week that was is let's say it is proving somewhat controversial this week. That I seem to have kicked 2 hornets' nests simultaneously.
Oh, good. These are my favourite kinds.
Do tell. So
normally at a weekend, that's my busiest time. That's when I tend to get most subscribers. Mm-hmm. So it's the week that was that kind of brings them in, if you know what I mean. That's what brings in the views, and therefore that's what brings in the subscribers. So I can only assume that this time round, the same sort of number of subscribers will have subscribed, except an equal number of subscribers has decided to depart because it's so outraged because of what I dared to say.
Oh no, what a shame.
So as of yesterday, the number of subscribers for yesterday was 4.
Oh my god!
And the number of subscribers for today was 3.
Oh, British.
What's your usual? That sounds exciting to me, but I don't know how it works. What's an
So, whatever you do, don't mention either Christchurch or Tommy Robbins.
You didn't need those guys anyway. You don't need them.
If it makes you feel any better, Britisher, let me just let me see. I lost. I got 1 subscriber yesterday. There you go. That'll make you feel better. People are saying, "How could you unsub from the greatest fence sitter of all time?"
I couldn't quite make their mind up.
Oh dear! And
actually, I have prepared a graphic, which I'm hoping actually to send to somebody who made me a sort of Britisher graphic some time ago. Not the person who did the avatar here for this.
Mm-hmm.
Although if that person can't do it, I might well approach the person who did the avatar and sort of see if that person can't produce that for me in a sort of upscalable version. If you get a PNG picture, you can kind of upscale it without it going all pixelated.
Oh yeah.
So I'll see whether they can produce that, because if one day I go for merchandise and whatever, then yes, there would be a kind of how shall we say, a lovely little icon which would represent the eternal accusation of fence sitting on my part. So there would literally be the fence sitter logo for the Britisher.
And people in chat are highlighting something which I very much want, which is you to grow a Melchett mustache on your avatar, Britisher.
Yes, actually, one of the first comments I got yesterday, this was obviously in reference to your mentioning the Melchett moustache. One of the first comments I got yesterday, once I'd launched a video, was, "What? No moustache?"
Yes, of course, because the thumbnail for last week's Fake Accents has you with a mustache.
Precisely, yes.
Ask the Deep Laws for assistance, apparently. When are you coming to Discord, Britisher?
Well, the way I look at it is, I'm an old fogey. Therefore, I am struggling just to cope with the technology that involves YouTube and Twitter. If I then add yet another layer to it, then indeed you might get me to have a stroke live on air one day.
Oh, that would be. I mean, that's either like really sad, really creepy, and quite sexually charged, or just very, very viewable. The British are having a stroke on air. That would definitely push me through the roof. If you could do that next week, Britisher, or towards the end of this stream, we'd get there. A couple of super chats. JS says, "Why don't Marxists drink proper tea?" I don't know. Anyone want to posit a guess?
Do they have tea?
What, Marxists? I suppose they're too busy starving to death to worry about it, or sitting.
Yes, all the tea plantations have withered.
Yes.
I gaze at it and going, should I be drinking this? What if I drink this? What would that mean to the suffering of the world?
Yes, drinking. I think any Marxist worth his salt or her salt that drinks tea is clearly culturally appropriating, so they can't do that.
You talking about salt and tea again?
Yeah, of course. People saying never have a stroke online, Britisher. Of course, he won't be able to after the end of this month, with the porn passes coming into effect. But Makuta Pterodax says for £5, Britisher, try uploading your videos at 10 a.m. or 4 p.m. Uploading your video at 2 to 3 a.m. I suspect will really hurt your viewer numbers. They'll be sleeping. And JS says, because property is theft.
Oh.
Property is theft.
Oh, that's good. And you win the internet.
That's fantastic. I'll be stealing that one.
Well, all I can say regarding the time of the upload is it gets uploaded when it's done.
Which in your case is just later and later and later.
Yes, yeah, precisely. But then again, if anybody has seen the last episode of the week that was, you might understand why. The amount of news that had to be gone through this week was obscene.
It was a week that started with Tucker Carlson and just ended with Christchurch and all the stuff that went in between.
Precisely. And, you know, I mean, just try sort of explaining your way through all the Brexit votes.
Yeah, like with ease to a multinational audience. I can imagine. All you need to do to oppress a Marxist is to eat a meal in front of them. So, yes. I think I am out of tea-related material for the evening. Does anyone else have anything else they'd like to speak about?
Yeah, what I would like to ask is, given that we have now made an episode about tea when we started, and we've now made another episode about tea, are we tea series?
Oh God!
Oh,
But thank you for allowing me to
can
put that in the tags to score hundreds of thousands of views. Obviously, going forward, but no, we're not.
You're going to have everyone unsubscribing.
Wondering what the hell's going on.
There's no one. Everyone's like, I subscribe for politics. Why are they talking about tea? I just don't understand.
I expect this channel to come under relentless attack from PewDiePie any moment.
I hope so. That would be amazing. People are like, I feel disgusted. Oh dear.
I'm saying you're going to lose subscribers.
I'm already losing subscribers because I haven't produced anything. Speaking of which, I'm really sorry, everyone, that I haven't produced any edited content for the last 7 weeks. I will be working on stuff as soon as my current server assessments come to an end. I've got commissioned or not commissioned or sponsored, but I was
waiting for the spring, really, aren't you?
Obviously
for the lammy season.
The lambing season. I was approached by an author who sent me a copy of his book to read. So I'm doing that, and I'll be doing an interview with him. I've also got a video. It's called. Let me see what I got to find it here, just for a second.
Sorry, I'm so easy.
That's all right. I can't remember the name of the book now, and I don't want to get it wrong on the stream. It's by a chap called Alexander Adams, and it's called Art, Identity Politics, and Cultural Entryism.
Ooh,
so it's fascinating. I've read about half of it. But
I was expecting it to be in keeping with this theme, you know. To tea or not to tea, that's the question.
To tea or not to tea, yes. So there's that one. And then we've got, I'm doing a video at the moment, I'm scripting the Brexit that should have been. So kind of an alternate history version of how things should have gone with the benefit of retrospect and hindsight, which should be interesting. So that's
we've got that sort of fantasy of Jacob Rees-Mogg and Boris Johnson in camouflage, you know, with jackboots kicking down the doors of Downing Street 10, saying "Get out, woman."
Somebody clip that. It's just
sending in the heavies.
There you go. But there we go. I think that's all that we're going to get through this evening. But thank you very much for joining me, everyone in chat. And a big thank you to my guests. Thank you very much for joining me, Base Liz.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, Daughter of Albion, Sarah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for being here, Robert.
Thank you. Time for tea and biscuits, I think.
And thank you very much for being here, as always, Britisher, despite your illness.
Well, would you believe it? I'm all out of tea.
Marvelous. And with that, good night, everyone. Take care.
Bye.
Good night.